Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Kristen Hilty from Making Math Make Sense. Today I'm going to focus on talking with everybody about how to do math talk at home with your primary age students. One of my favorite lines that I like to share with teachers is that math is not learned in silence. We need to get our kids talking, and not just talking to us, but also talking to their peers as well. For this video, I'm going to show you how to do math talk with one of my favorite pictures at the beach. This comes from the book Math Talk by Shar Forston and Tori Richards. You'll see at the end of this video where you can do a link to be able to download this book as an ebook if you would like to purchase it. This picture, you can see we are at the beach. And with our primary age students, one of the things we want to do is develop their schema. Where are we today? What are things we can do at the beach? What does it feel like when we touch sand or when we put our feet into the ocean? I also like to ask them, what do you see in this picture that we could count? Most of the time, right off the bat, they say, well, we see people. So we talk about those people. And at first, I look at the people who are flying kites. And I say, all right, let's count those people who are flying kites. 1, 2, 3. Now, an important piece of information that I share with all teachers that I work with is that every time we ask our children to count, make them also count backwards in the same increment. Counting forward and counting backwards, it's the same skill, but our kids are much stronger at addition and multiplication because we typically tend to only count or skip count in the forward direction. What we want to do here is bring in the inverse, have them go in the reverse direction, and that's going to strengthen our subtraction and division strategies as well. So if we counted our people flying kites, 1, 2, 3, we're now going to count those people backwards. 3, 2, 1, 0. I do emphasize that 0 because that is a hard concept for our little ones to grasp onto. So we see we have 3 people who are flying kites. What are the rest of the people doing at the beach today? And we can see that they are resting on blankets. Now we can talk about different ways that we could count those people. We're going to start just by counting each individual person, the same way that we counted the people who were flying kites. We would count that up to 8. We would then count backwards again as well. I would then ask students, what's another way we could count those people? Because of the way they're arranged on those blankets, we could see that we could count them by twos. So we're going to touch those and we're going to count 2, 4, 6, 8, and then we're going to do that in the reverse. 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. I do put out the challenge, is there another way that you could count them? And kids will see here we could group 2 blankets together, which would give us groups of 4 that we could count. And then we can talk about, well, which way made it the most sense to count our people who were on blankets? And that gives kids a chance for them to explain how they see it best. Which way is the most comfortable for them? At this point, we can then talk about, well, we saw we had 3 people who were flying kites and we had 8 people who were on blankets. With my kinder and first grade students, I like to have them have Unifix cubes, and I have them sitting with partners. And so partner A would build a tower for the people who were flying kites. So they would use their cubes or their counters, and they would have 3. Partner B would then use their cubes or counters, and they would build a tower for those who were on blankets, and they would then have a tower of 8. At this point, we can now do some comparison. Are there more people flying kites, or are there more people on blankets? Turn and talk with your partner. How do you know that? And so then by looking at their towers, they can see partner B's tower is much longer than partner A's tower. So we can see there are more people on or on blankets today. At that point, you can then turn it into how many more or how many fewer. Throw out some of those questions. And because they have that concrete material that they can connect with, it makes it easier for them to answer those questions as well. We could put the 2 towers together and talk about how many people were at the beach today. Lots of different ways that we can extend that. There are different things you can count in this picture. We could count sandcastles, we could count fish, we could count clouds, we could count kites. You can see that there's a lot of references to the number 3 in this picture, which I'm sure that was focused on. If you watched the video for the pre-KK students, you will get those references in that video. I can also turn my attention here to geometry and have them find examples of rectangles, of triangles, of parallelograms, 3-dimensional shapes versus 2-dimensional shapes that they would see in this picture as well. Just different ways to get kids thinking and to get kids counting. One of the things that we can do to extend math talk is I like to then take it from pictures and have kids begin to build addition and subtraction equations based on the story that they see. Some of the best ways to do that is to have them take a picture of their family, and because kids are comfortable talking about their family. So in this picture, you see my family here, and I always have kids start by talking about the whole first. How many people do we have in our family? And then we decompose it into the parts. So a story that I would have kids say using this picture might be something like this. There are there are 6 people in my family. 4 are boys, 2 are girls. There are 6 people in my family. Another way I could reference my family is I could say there are 6 people in my family. 3 are wearing black shirts, 3 are not. There are 6 people in my family. Or finally, I could say there are 6 people in my family. 5 were rooting for the Reds, 1 was rooting for the Cubs. There are 6 people in my family. You'll notice every time I gave my story, I started with the whole, I then talked about the parts, and then I wrapped it up by bringing it back to the whole again. Back here in our beach picture, have kids find situations here where they could tell those stories. I could say there are 11 people at the beach today. 3 are flying kites, 8 are on blankets. There are 11 people at the beach today. So have kids practice telling that story from that whole into the parts, back to the whole again. Now you can see I have mine set up in what we call a number bond, where we show the relationship between the parts and the whole. And what we ask kids to do with that is to then take that and begin putting it into some kind of a sentence frame. In this first sentence frame, you'll see I gave them all the words. All they had to do was attach in where those numbers fit within that story context. Here, what I've done is I've taken out the parts, the attributes. What does the number represent? What does it describe? And now you can give kids that freedom to put that piece in. We can take it to where we have kids then begin to build out those equations. And so what I like to do with this is have them use sticky notes of 2 different colors. One color that shows the part, and the second color and a second color that shows the whole. So you can see that whole part or part whole relationship. You can see as those sticky notes come into play, you're having kids talk about when we're adding, what do you notice about the add ends? What do you notice about the parts on either side of that plus sign? But then when we subtract, what do you notice on either side of the minus sign? Where we have to have our whole minus our part. Now, the one quick equation that's missing on here that I would strongly encourage you to build up to is where you flip the equal sign to the left and you would have part equals whole minus part, so that kids are practicing that as well, because they will see it represented with the equal sign on both the right and the left side. That's why it's important to teach kids equals does not mean answer. Equals means balance. What I have on one side of the equal sign has the same value as what I have on the other side of the equal sign. So it doesn't matter where within that equation I put that equal sign. One of the other things you can do is use this to have your kids practice writing stories, so you can see sort of how to build out that progression, where we start with just a story, and then we build it to where we have kids writing a story, but then they also write their equation. And then finally we get to the point where kids are writing a story, but then they're also asking a question at the end, and then they're showing how to solve that story as well. And the last thing that I want to share with you here is showing you how you can use this to for vocabulary. So with this picture here, I could have my kids find the vocabulary that we've been working on. And I can say the cat is under the table, or the dog is beside Jack, or the mice are in front of the counter. This picture, I did the same thing here, but what I did is we're looking at shapes. So in a real world picture, they would have to find examples of those shapes and where they're represented, and then talk about the attributes. How do you know it's a hexagon? What do you see that tells you it's a hexagon, and talk about its 6 sides or its 6 angles? Math talk can be done with any picture you have. This came from a trip that my family went on, and I just took random pictures while we were there. And these are great to have kids talking about, what do you notice? You could have kids talk about patterns that they see. We could give story situations about how many people came to the game, how many ate hot dogs, or how many didn't eat hot dogs. This picture here is great for positional vocabulary: tall, taller, tallest, and we can see those buildings in the background. Also talking about three-dimensional shapes within this picture as well. This one here, I could talk about those statues. If each statue is about 10 feet tall, how tall do you think my daughter is? Or we could make some predictions about how many toes we felt were in that museum that day. This picture here is great from a distance, but it's even better up close. Patterning, colors, great for our third graders when we're looking at arrays, and we could talk about how many names are on that wall. With these window washers, you can have your kids tell stories with these window washers. How many windows do they have to wash in a day? So how many does each have to wash? Or if there's 10 window washers who work on this building, but we only see 4, how many are at lunch right now? Have them put together those equations that go with it as well. Lots of different ways. Scoreboards, sporting events, great opportunity to have your kids looking at math in a real world situation, finding those numbers, talking about those numbers. What do they represent? What do they mean? So again, as I go back to the beginning of this to remind you, math isn't learned in silence. Have fun with it. Your kids will enjoy it, and I think you will enjoy it too. Have fun talking math.